Adam laughed and replied, "They should have a family card since they're my family," when I asked him why he had produced one for his parents. "Have an issue with that?" He said, "If you knew who helped you when you were alone, you wouldn't talk like this, would you?" I was astonished by his tone of confidence. Was Adam always this way? "You should do more for my family if you're thankful," he replied. "Then you will truly be involved. It feels like you're on trial till then." A marital trial? I had never heard of anything like it. Adam went on to say, "It indicates that you are still not a complete member of the family. You can leave at any time if you don't like it. Right now, there are just the 6 of us in our family." I was surprised. I promptly moved out and canceled our shared credit cards since I was at a loss for words. "Hello, my name is Christina Perry, and I'm 31 years old. I work from home as a freelance artist and make a career by drawing pictures. Prior to this, I worked for a large advertising firm, but shortly after getting married 4 years ago, I began doing freelance work. I was raised by my grandparents after my parents died in a car accident while I was a little child. I returned to my parents' old home in the heart of the city when I went to college, and I've remained there ever since. Adam, my spouse, and I met at the French restaurant where he was employed. My coworkers and I used to frequently visit this quaint restaurant since it served delicious food at affordable costs. Everyone, including myself, was drawn to Adam, the affable waiter. He was undoubtedly a handsome man with a distinctively cool air. To be honest, I could understand why some customers came specifically to see him, as the manager even joked. If I claimed not to be a little starstruck myself, I would be lying. Adam and I rapidly became close, and soon after, we were referred to as a couple. We eventually got married somehow. In retrospect, I scarcely recall that period. It seems to be a haze. I was dating him 1 minute, and then I was his wife the next. However, I was genuinely delighted to marry Adam since I did love him. I quit my work at the design firm amicably after the wedding and began doing freelance work. Adam continued to work long, erratic hours, frequently late into the night, at the restaurant. It became difficult to balance work and life, so I made the decision to pursue a career on my own. Things began to alter at that point. When I explained my concept to Adam, he remarked, "That sounds smart, Christina, since I had always wanted to work for myself. You'll find it easier, and it's fantastic that you're doing what you enjoy." He gave me his whole support, and that's how our marriage began. We simply signed the marriage papers and bypassed the entire wedding commotion because we weren't into elaborate celebrations. We had a brief encounter with our relatives. I stayed at home taking care of chores and doing freelance work while Adam went to work at the restaurant. Despite our chaotic schedules, we made it a point to eat meals together whenever possible. Although it was a humble life, we were content with it. Yes, marriage is really fantastic, I thought. About a year later, things started to change. "My family wants to visit. Is that okay?" Adam asked one day. "Sure," I replied. I was actually excited. I'd only met Adam's family briefly before, so I thought this would be a great chance to bond with them. Losing my parents when I was young made me admire the idea of a big family, and Adam's family seemed close. But when they arrived, 5 of them, I was completely caught off guard. "Which room is mine?" his sister asked the moment she stepped inside. She was 35, 2 years older than both Adam and me, and worked at a local store. Her bluntness surprised me because she didn't seem this way when we first met. Adam's 23-year-old sister came too, but she stayed quiet, barely saying a word, just like when I met her before. Following their lead, I showed them to the guest room and gave Adam's parents my old room, the only one with a Japanese-style setup. I thought it would suit them best. Once everyone settled in, Adam's older sister suddenly said, "Well, since we're all living together now, you better start treating our family right." I was confused. What did she mean by that? When I looked at Adam, hoping he'd explain, he just laughed in a way I had never heard before. "They gave up their place and moved in here without telling you," he finally said. "Sorry, but our family home had to be vacated quickly, and they had nowhere else to go." I couldn't believe it. Why hadn't Adam told me? I thought they were just visiting for a day or two, not moving in permanently. From the moment they moved in, his family made no effort to adjust or contribute. They expected me to do everything: cleaning, cooking, managing the house, while they sat around and did nothing. They said whatever they wanted without caring how it made me feel. Even worse, they didn't try to find jobs or look for their own place. Whenever I brought up the topic of work, they just ignored me or gave vague answers. I got another shock when Adam's sister said, "Oh, I quit that awful job at the supermarket." I thought she had a full-time job, but it turned out she was only working part-time. She admitted she hadn't kept a steady job since high school. Adam's parents were no different. They also quit their part-time jobs before moving in. As for his younger sister, she didn't have a job at all. She claimed to be a student, but that wasn't true. When I asked why she didn't work, she said, "Why should I? I'm part of a well-off family now." Confused, I asked who she meant by well-off. Her response left me speechless. "You obviously," Adam's sister said with a smirk. "You got a big settlement and insurance payout after your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this house. You can live comfortably without working." I felt cornered. When Adam came home, I told him what had happened, hoping he'd understand. But instead, he exploded. "Everyone's exhausted after being forced out of their home. Give them some time to recover, or do you want to kick my family out, Christina?" His anger stunned me into silence. Then, just as quickly, his tone softened. "I'm sorry for yelling," he said. "It's been a tough day for me, too. Can you please try to be more understanding?" Looking back, I realized Adam was good at manipulating situations by mixing anger with kindness. But at the time, I didn't see it. I agreed to put up with things a little longer. Over time, the situation with his family only got worse. They treated me like a servant, expecting me to handle all the housework. On top of that, they kept asking for money every time they went out. "We can't even look for jobs without some cash," they said. "It's only fair. But if we can't find work, we'll just keep staying here." Reluctantly, I gave them money. They claimed they used it while job hunting, but I doubted they even tried. When I thought about confronting them, I knew it would backfire. They'd blame me, and I'd end up arguing with the entire family for hours. Talking to Adam didn't help either. "They're frustrated about not finding jobs," he said. "Just bear with it a little longer. I'll talk to them." Adam's attempts to smooth things over didn't solve anything. But eventually, their money requests became less frequent. I guessed Adam had spoken to them, so I let it go. Still, the money I had already given them was never returned. Then, after about 3 months of putting up with everything, I noticed something strange. "Why is the credit card bill so high?" I wondered. Could it be unauthorized charges? I quickly checked the statement, and what I saw shocked me. I discovered that all the charges on the credit card were made using family credit cards. The purchases ranged from food and drinks to books, games, and even expensive designer bags and clothes. Each transaction had a number from 1 to 8, which meant 6 family credit cards had been issued. To my shock, these cards were under my name. Adam had issued them without telling me. I remembered him saying, "It seems like you'd handle this better. And it's easier to manage payments, right? Can I leave it to you? I had agreed to manage the family finances, not realizing he'd use this as an excuse to issue multiple cards. Now I understood why his family had stopped asking for money. They were using the credit cards to pay for everything and even withdrawing cash. When I confronted Adam, asking why he issued cards for his family without consulting me, he chuckled and said, "Well, you always complain when they say they're broke." What else could I do? And don't forget who supported you when you were alone. Can you really speak like that to the family of your benefactors? His confident and dismissive tone stunned me. Was this really the Adam I married? If you're truly grateful, you should do more for my family, he added. Then I'll accept you as part of the family. Until then, think of this as your trial period. A trial period in marriage. I'd never heard of such a thing. Adam went on, ignoring my silence. This means you're not officially part of the family yet. If you're not okay with that, you can leave any time. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in the family. You only belong once you prove yourself useful. That's when I realized Adam's true nature. It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I was completely stunned and started thinking seriously about divorce. I couldn't help but wonder why I had married Adam in the first place. At first, I was attracted to him simply because of his looks. Like many other women, I was infatuated with his charm and appearance without really knowing him. I remembered the first time Adam approached me. It was at the restaurant where he worked. I had gone to the restroom, and when I came back, he said, "You seem different, Christina." Kind of mysterious. Sorry, I shouldn't say that to a customer. I was caught off guard but intrigued. I started paying more attention to him, and before I knew it, I was falling for his charm. Looking back now, it felt like it was all part of his strategy to win me over. I recalled a moment when a coworker joked about me being a wealthy lady living alone in a condo. Not long after, Adam started chatting with me more often. Maybe he saw an opportunity. Maybe he was interested in my financial situation and the condo I owned. To be honest, Adam wasn't even my type. I preferred mature men who were calm and serious. Adam was more modern and, to put it bluntly, a bit shallow. Yet somehow, I ended up falling for him anyway. Now it all felt like a huge mistake. I always found it strange how easily Adam could charm women. He was the typical handsome guy who knew how to say the right things to make someone like me, who was new to the working world and inexperienced with men, fall for him. Looking back, I felt frustrated and ashamed for falling into his trap and marrying him. I wanted to scream, break things, and let out all my anger, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I decided to play the long game and get my revenge. To do that, I had to endure this situation for a little longer. Just like Adam manipulated me, I planned to take control of the situation, including his family. The condo we lived in had been bought by my dad with a mortgage shortly after I was born. Back then, it wasn't expensive, but the area developed quickly with a new shopping center nearby. The condo was now considered a luxury residence. My parents had hoped for more children, so they bought a spacious place. That's why there was enough room even after Adam's entire family moved in. But despite its size, having his family around made life unbearable for me, especially since I worked from home. I only put up with it because I had a plan. Adam's sister was right about one thing. There was no mortgage on the condo anymore. When I was 4, both my parents died in a tragic car accident. They were on their way back from my paternal grandfather's funeral when their car was hit by a speeding vehicle on the highway. I was supposed to go with them that day, but I stayed home because I had the flu and a high fever. My maternal grandparents came to take care of me at our condo, which is why I survived. The mortgage was paid off through credit life insurance after my parents passed, leaving me with just the property taxes and management fees to handle. When Adam saw how little the monthly costs were, he suggested something. Since there's no mortgage, I'll contribute just a bit more than what you're paying for taxes and fees. That should cover our household expenses with your income. Right then, we can each use our own earnings for personal stuff. Sounds fair, doesn't it? At the time, I agreed. I thought he had a point, and I was hopeful that his contribution would ease some of my financial burden. Up until then, I had been paying for everything on my own. But looking back, I realized how naive I had been. Adam's plan wasn't to help. It was just another way to take advantage of me. I was blinded by my love for Adam and went along with everything he suggested without questioning it. Adam probably saw himself as the head of the household, the one supporting me, which is why he felt comfortable calling me a parasite. But the truth was very different. I was the one paying most of the bills, utilities, groceries, social outings, and entertainment. Now, with 6 extra people living in the house, managing everything on my income alone was becoming impossible. I wanted to escape this burden as soon as I could, but I pretended not to notice and kept enduring it, clenching my teeth. I watched Adam's family go on shopping sprees without a care, reminding myself that I get the last laugh. Finally, after 4 months of planning my escape, the time to act arrived. I'm done. It's time to choose. It's either me or your family, I told Adam firmly, giving him an ultimatum. He looked shocked, but I didn't stop. None of your family members do anything to help around the house. They dump all their chores on me, knowing I work from home. I'm not sitting around doing nothing, yet they treat me like a freeloader and insult me, claiming you're the one supporting me. I've had enough, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Adam smirked and replied coldly, "Then you should leave. Didn't I tell you before, you're not truly part of this family yet. Giving up now just proves you haven't earned your place." I stared at him in disbelief. What's surprising about this? He said, "If you can't tolerate my family, then you're the one who has to go. And since it's not my fault, I'll take this condo as a limine and claim half of your savings as part of the property settlement." At that moment, it all clicked. This had been his plan all along. That's why his family had been making my life miserable, trying to drive me out. I had suspected it before, but hearing him say it so plainly still hurt. This was the man I had once loved and married. But thanks to this revelation, I was finally sure about what I had to do. "Fine," I said calmly. "I'll divorce you, but let me make this clear. This condo belongs to me, and I'm not at fault here." Adam looked startled. "What did you say?" he asked. "The reason for the divorce is your family moving in without my consent, and the way they've disrespected me," I said firmly. Adam seemed shocked by my refusal to accept his terms. He hadn't expected me to stand up for myself. Since we got married, I had always given in to Adam's demands. Thinking back on those moments made me angry. I had had enough. "I can't stand another moment with you or your family, so I'll leave now. But you all better be ready to move out too," I told him firmly. Adam shouted, "This is ridiculous. This is our home, and we're not leaving. Ever heard of tenant rights? You can't just evict us from our own house." Ignoring his protests, I packed up and left the condo. I went to my grandparents' house for refuge and told them everything. They were shocked by what I had been through and scolded me for not coming to them sooner. With tears in their eyes, they hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Grandma and Grandpa. I know I made you worry, but I'll be okay now," I said, forcing a smile through my own tears. The day after I left, Adam contacted me in a panic. "What's this about? What mail are you talking about? He asked, referring to the certified letter I'd sent. I felt relieved that things were moving so quickly. I had already hired a lawyer to handle the divorce, and as soon as I told them I had left the condo, they started the legal process right away. I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo, Adam said confidently. But legally, he was obligated to pay, and he had no right to stay in the apartment. What do you mean? He continued. The condo is jointly owned since we're married. If that's your stance, then compensate me for half its value to buy out my share, he demanded, making an absurd claim. I kept my cool and replied firmly, if you have anything to say, communicate through my lawyer from now on. Then I ended the call. I figured Adam would call again, and as expected, he did the very next morning. What's this all about? He repeated, clearly lacking anything new to say. What mail are you referring to, and why aren't the cards working? What did you do? I calmly explained, what I did was cancel the card. That card was in my name, and you were just an authorized user on the family account. Remember, before leaving the condo, I had moved all the accounts linked to that card onto a new one and canceled the old card. Naturally, when I canceled mine, the family card stopped working too. I was the one covering all the expenses. I said, yes, you paid for the management fees and property taxes for the first 5 months, but that's it. It's not much, but if you prefer, I can deduct it from the alimony you owe, I added mockingly. Adam had no response. For the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. I heard muffled shouting on the other end of the line. That's right. Adam had only paid the agreed amount for the first 5 months. After that, he came up with excuses about work and other things to delay payment. Then he just stopped paying altogether. If he thought he was still contributing, it showed just how forgetful he was. But I didn't care anymore. I was done with him, and his actions no longer mattered to me. That's the situation, I said calmly. So please reimburse your share of the living expenses I've been covering. I've kept detailed records of all household expenses, and I'll use them as evidence to split our finances fairly. It's marital property, he argued. Yes, I understand. Let's divide it properly, I agreed, before hanging up. He reminded me not to forget about it. A few days later, Adam called again, asking the same question. I realized not only was he forgetful, but he also couldn't seem to come up with anything new to say. What do you mean the shared property division is 0? He demanded. You must be swimming in money from your parents' insurance and alimonies. Ah, so that's what he and his family assumed. I calmly explained, my savings from before the marriage aren't part of shared property. And since we didn't save anything during the marriage, the shared amount is naturally 0. If you think I'm lying, feel free to check with the lawyer. From now on, please communicate through my attorney. I won't talk to you directly anymore. Goodbye. I hung up, blocked his number, and felt a wave of relief. A month after I left, Adam and his family finally moved out of the condo. Not because they had a change of heart, but because they couldn't keep up their lifestyle without my money. Adam's income alone wasn't enough to support a family of 5 who had grown used to spending lavishly. With my credit card gone, tightening their belts wasn't an option for them. I had allowed them to use the card, knowing it would eventually lead to this outcome. When Adam's family ran out of money, they started demanding shopping funds from him. When he refused, they began stealing from his wallet. Even as he got angry, they blamed him for my leaving. To make things worse, the utilities, electricity, gas, and water were all disconnected. I had arranged for this since the condo was in my name, and I had no intention of returning. Adam tried to get the utilities restored, but since the accounts were under my name, only I could authorize it. Without electricity or water, the sweltering summer heat became unbearable. After weeks of struggling, Adam and his family had no choice but to leave. As they vacated, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. They had created their own downfall, and now I was finally free. I didn't know, and I didn't care anymore. Adam tried to hold out until the very end, but without electricity or even the ability to take a bath, he eventually gave up. The divorce moved faster than I expected, not because Adam had a change of heart, but because of his own mistakes. He betrayed our marriage by chasing after someone else, thinking he could easily get rid of me. He bragged about owning a fancy downtown apartment to impress younger women. Although it was stunning that he behaved in this way while his family was still residing in the house, they chose to overlook it. I had covertly placed cameras throughout the house before I left. Everything was captured on tape, providing me with all the evidence I required. Adam must have misjudged me, but there was no denying his contempt. He had cheated on me after bringing his family into my house without my consent, accruing debt on the family's credit cards, and leaving me with the bills. For everything he had done, I demanded alimony and large sums of money. Adam's face became white at the sight of the sum, and he pleaded with me to make amends. However, I had no plans to return. I stole any assets I could and forced him to borrow as much money as he could from his job because I knew he couldn't pay. He ultimately complied with my demands after I threatened to sue him for using the family cards fraudulently. I'm not worried about it anymore, but I can only hope he works hard to pay off his obligations. I'm currently staying at my grandparents' house because the divorce is official. I still haven't made a decision regarding the condo. It has sentimental importance because it was my parents' house, but I don't feel like I want to live there anymore after everything that occurred. I may sell it. In terms of my career, I'm doing great. I'm doing well as an illustrator, and I'll most likely soon be living alone again. But for the time being, I'm content to work from my grandparents' home and continue to rely on them for assistance. I'll choose a partner more carefully going future. Again, I refuse to let appearances influence my decisions. Finding a genuine life partner who appreciates honesty, kindness, and respect is what I'm hoping for.